Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cartoons Meeting. T Bills, I see you. What's going on, my people? We all know what is going on in Nigeria. It cannot be easy for anybody, especially if you've been following the news or if you are out on the streets protesting or if you are on social media retweeting and airing out your views. Yesterday, we watched the military, under whose orders we still do not know, plunge with weaponry of mass destruction, of lethal force into peaceful protesters at the Lekki toll gate. Now, Nigeria has reached a boiling point, and the result of that is all the chaos we are seeing all around the country. Today, I have with me Dele Farotimi, a renowned lawyer, an activist, and a speaker to help us walk through this. What is going on in Nigeria? What's the way forward? What's the response expected? I'm going to check now to see if he has joined this meeting already. He's not here just yet, so we'll wait until he joins us. But he's here right now. I'm going to admit him. My audio? Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, bro. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Can you hear me? Is my audio
Yeah,
clear?
loud and clear. Loud and
Okay.
clear.
Oh, thank you very much for agreeing to come in and have another discussion with us. Just a few months ago, you and I were speaking, and I'm not going to say it was like a prophetic thing, but we were talking about how Nigeria is approaching a point where decisive action must be taken. But this time around, it was taken by the youth. The youth have come out to protest, and the gateway for the change we're looking for has come under the platform of End SARS. But right now, it has broadened to end bad governance. It has broadened to a whole lot. It has opened Pandora's box. It has exposed the rot that has lived in Nigeria's underbelly for such a long time. And yesterday, we watched as the military fired into peaceful protesters. You know, I wanted to start this conversation when I asked you initially on the basis of how Nigeria can move forward as a united body and stay as Nigeria. But with what has happened, how do we look at the possibility of Nigeria moving forward as one country? That's how I have to start this conversation.
Well, it is unfortunate that after what took place last night, the question that Nigerians are forced to be asking themselves is whether we would remain one as a country. It is an insult to the memory of those young men and women who were murdered across the length and breadth of Nigeria. Yes, the one in Lekki was particularly gruesome, but I did see videos of security personnel turning their guns on human beings, Nigerians, at close range in other locations across the length and breadth of Nigeria. There are videos. Despite the evil denial of the humanity of those who have been killed, there are evidences of their humanity, and we will not forget them. So when the first question people now began to ask, I've seen an increase in secessionist talks.
Yes.
And most of them have been well-reasoned discussions as well. And you have to consider them reasonable in light of the madness that we saw yesterday. Because if the army of the Nigerian state would turn its guns on young men and women who were simply asking, I told them from the beginning that this is a demand for citizenship.
Yes.
But they didn't know. They thought it was about End SARS. So they kept talking End SARS. But it was easy for us to sit back and know that we've dealt with these reactions to the Nigerian state in our own youth. The actual problem is the system that produces SARS, the system that devalues citizenship and dehumanizes even the law enforcement officer to the point where they are shorn of humanity and can turn their guns on fellow humans. I would even hesitate to shoot a dog the way human beings have been killed in Nigeria by agents of the Nigerian state. So when you now hear people reduce the argument to maybe Nigeria should break up, so that maybe at that point, maybe a fellow Yoruba soldier would think twice before pointing his gun at me. Maybe a fellow Igbo soldier would think twice before turning his gun on Ndi Igbo. We find these justifications in reaction to the madness that the Nigerian state has visited on us. And then I must also speak to this. When we begin to couch these things in tribal terms, I need people in Lagos State particularly to ask themselves one question. The thugs, the hoodlums that were transported in state-owned buses in full glare of cameras in daytime, were those Fulani thugs? Were they sent by the Fulani? That is one. SUVs were dropping off protesters in Abuja. SUVs were dropping off anti-SARS protesters, armed ones. Police vans were dropping off, police vans were dropping off armed hoodlums who were attacking defenseless protesters. The point is this: there is a convergence point for the criminal elements in the Nigerian state, and that convergence point is the Nigerian ruling class. Every time their interests are threatened, all they ever do is find ways to divide us. They sponsored the talks. Let's be clear about that.
Yes.
They sponsored the violence. Let's be clear about that. It is not an Hausa Fulani Yoruba problem, and it is certainly not an Igbo problem, even though I can no longer bring myself to speak against those who are demanding secession because they are faced with the insanity of the Nigerian state. You cannot have a rational argument against a demand for self-determination when this is the madness you have to contend with in the alternative. So when you talk about, I have talked severally to the binary vision of secessionist embraces, but what else is left for people when their visions are constantly clarified by the pains that are inflicted by the Nigerian state? But in spite of all of that, I am still of the opinion that we can all sit down in goodwill, as men and women of goodwill. We are more than the people fomenting this. We are more. And the memory of those, some of the young men and women who died all over Lagos, they are from every nationality in Nigeria.
Yes,
they are Igbo men, they are Yoruba, they are Hausas. I've seen all sorts of people. These are simply young men who want to be citizens. They are not arguing anybody. They don't want to be part of it. They didn't. Nobody was carrying a Biafran flag or an Odua flag or an Arewa flag. They were carrying Nigerian flags, and they were fired upon by people wearing Nigerian army uniform, carrying guns, bought with Nigerian taxpayers' money, firing bullets. As long as there is a God in heaven, I ask his name in this hour, that the blood of those who are shed unjustly, innocently, in cold blood, may their killers know no peace, and may generations pay recompense for what they have done. Amen to that.
Amen. I'm with you on that.
Nigeria.
I'm going to jump in quickly now. We have noticed today there are videos coming out right now. We've seen people in IPOB flying their flags, carrying weapons, saying that, okay, this is the time, to break up. People are taking advantage of the situation. I don't know if to call it advantage or to call it reasonable, like you have said, because they're actually making reasonable arguments. We have seen people in the North, they have actually pushed a religious dimension to it, just like you said, to divide, to scatter, to conquer. So what is the response that we should be expecting at this point, and who should the response be coming from? Because it's difficult to know what direction we're going, considering the fact that the response by the government was to point weapons on peaceful protesters. What are we looking at here in reality?
See, nature abhors vacuums, and just as it abhors vacuums, nature also has rendered man an animal that constantly searches for equity. When man believes himself to have been unjustly treated, his spirit constantly searches for justice. So justice is the first condition of the human spirit. When people are boxed into corners where the only escape hatch that is available to them, as insane as the like of me might think it is, even I am now asking myself, am I the insane one for continually speaking to Nigerian unity? So if IPOB people began to unfold their flags today, the only person to blame, sorry?
They have already started. The videos are out. I've seen the Yes.
No, they've been messing about with the networks all day, so I haven't really seen much. But it wouldn't surprise me, because if I were running a secessionist enterprise, I would particularly be looking for an inflection point at which I must declare my intentions. How does anybody find the grace to speak to Nigerian unity after what happened yesterday? I really don't know what anyone might expect someone like me to say, because I have called out the secessionists for months, in fact, for years. I have persuaded them, I have evangelized them. Quite a number of them came to me with talk, and they were coming around. They were beginning to embrace the idea of one Nigeria, and then this happened. So in reality, I must say that secession is a reaction, but something led to that reaction. Nigeria is at an inflection point. I'll be a madman. I might look mad, but I'm not crazy. But I'll be a madman to be telling anybody not to do whatever they believe is in their own best interest. I still don't believe secession is in anybody's best interest. I believe that we are more than them, and we can actually have a conversation that will lead to an equitable, united, and just Nigeria. But that is not an easy message to sell in the aftermath of the death of these young men, but it still doesn't make secession right. I can't speak to secession. Those who have caused the current situation should go and exercise their brain, or it might very well be that it was maybe what happened yesterday was intended as a trigger for something that we all don't know. But what happened yesterday was done by the Nigerian state, and the president, General Muhammadu Buhari, he should take responsibility for this. I said a prayer when he came on board, and I actually posted it, and it's in my book. I said I really hoped that General Muhammadu Buhari will not be the last president of a united Nigeria. I don't know how this will play out, and I pray it does not end in a dismemberment of Nigeria. It will be a disservice to the memory of those who have died in this struggle. And I don't believe that not one of them died for a secessionist cause. Not one. I've heard of a particular young man whose last word, his dying words, peace and unity. Nigerian soldiers shot him. He died, but his dying word, peace and unity. In fact, it pains me that I do dishonor to myself, not to his memory, because I should have memorized that boy's name so that I might be able to tell you what his name is. For those who know his name, please never forget his name. It was recorded.
It was reported, I saw it.
And unity. Those were his last words. I cannot, even if only because of what that young man has said, I will never speak against the unity of Nigeria. But I will speak continually against the inequities, the wickedness, the evil of those who rule us and the governing system that they operate. But I can't speak. I cannot, if only for the memory of those young people, I can never speak against the unity of Nigeria.
Okay, so let me. We have seen them, and by them I mean the government, the states, those who are supposedly ruling Nigeria or leading Nigeria. We've seen them use tactics of infiltration, trying to infiltrate the ranks, trying to break by sponsoring the hoodlums, by even sponsoring the jailbreak. The jailbreak. Some of the prisoners who were interviewed openly said that the wardens opened the door for them and said, run. There was no gun, there was no fire, there was nothing. He said, they just said, run, to create chaos. Is it possible that there are people that can be fingered and held accountable? And in holding accountable, who is going to do who is going to be judge and jury at this juncture? Because at this point, we don't seem to know where we're going. We don't seem to know who is doing anything. We're just seeing things in play. Who do we look to now? Because that's the question the youth are asking. When it is time to speak, who do we speak to? I am concerned.
You know, I was speaking with a few friends earlier on, members of my own generation. We're in our 50s now. And a question not unlike the one you just raised now was asked of me. And I said to them, just as I had said in my last response to you, nature abhor vacuums. My own generation, Professor Shoyinka called his generation wasted, right? My generation was the hopeful generation. We had hopes. We were told we were the greater tomorrow. We were tomorrow's leaders. Nigeria was on a trajectory to becoming the best country in Black Africa, if not in the world. We grew up in First Act 77. Every black person of consequence came back to Nigeria. It was a melting pot. So we grew up believing that our country would become a citadel, and black people all over the world would come to Nigeria, and it would be a place of refuge for our race. Those were the ideals we grew up with. So we didn't want to die. But in spite of not wanting to die, we fought. We fought Babangida to a standstill. We chased Abacha eventually. At least his class decided to kill him. And then they gave us this democracy. We were very hopeful, you see, very, very hopeful. But the generation that Nigeria is having to contend with, you know, our own hopes were dashed.
Yes.
Yeah, our hopes were dashed, but this particular generation, they are hopeless. Everything about Nigeria offers them no hope. They look all around them. They see no hope. So where we were afraid to die because we were hopeful, these ones, they have no fear of death because living for them is almost like death already. Look, these kids, when we were growing up, we had only one solitary black and white TV in the house that everybody would stand around. Maybe if you were living in a tenement building, it might be that there were like 5, 6 families living in the building. And all of you will stand in front of one black and white TV. You're waiting until 4:35 when NTA will come on board. And then they will show you the same silly cartoons over and over. We grew up restricted but hopeful. These kids on their phone, they are seeing the world. Some of them have become mega stars. I was watching Wizkid the other day. My boy was flowing. I see the likes of Banky. I see all of them. They know that they can be as good as any other person anywhere else in the world. but they see their hopes dashed every day by evil rulers, by a bad governance system, and they are being told every day that they are not citizens. So when this system is planning its response, it is still planning responses on the basis of how it dealt with my generation. It has forgotten, and it has never factored it in, that this particular generation, they are citizens of the world, and they don't want to be slaves in their own country. When they said end SARS, I laughed. I went on social media. I said, the lazy youth, is it that you are planning revolution, or what do you mean by end SARS? When they said, when the government did this usual thing, that the way it dealt with my own generation, they changed the name from SARS to SWAT. And then the young people said, lie is the same people. And then they started bringing scientific explanations and arguments, and the government had nothing to say again. So it showed that Bobo no go work. The moment they said no to end SWAT, I knew we were in a revolution already, whether we all want to admit it to ourselves or not, because there is no way the system can end SARS and continue to exist. The Nigerian system operates on impunity. Only impunity will make a soldier carry his gun and shoot defenseless citizens. Soldier in a democracy. That is because SARS must exist. This entire system itself is SARS. It operates on impunity. So if anybody is looking for a way forward, and we all should, men of goodwill, even if they were thieves. Somebody like Obasanjo, for instance, is not a man I particularly respect or like, but he's an intelligent man. I can respect his intelligence, even if I don't respect his politics. Professor Soyinka is there. I'm sure he can hold his nose long enough to tolerate an Obasanjo in a meeting. They are the elders in this community. There are other elders all over the country. They should sit down and find a way to devise a mechanism that takes Nigeria forward peacefully. But if anybody is thinking for 1 second, sorry, let me just round up with this. If anybody is thinking that we can just move back to what is normal, where is normalcy after this? So without addressing the issue of how do we go forward, it means that they are simply playing into something that is demanding strife and social unrest. But please, sorry I took so long.
No, that's okay. It's good that you actually even ended on that note. Somebody in the comment section says he has to disagree with you that there's tremendous hope and potential, and that all this generation is lacking is a sense of history. So that's the first thing I want you to respond to, and then please follow that up with, if we are depending on the Obasanjos and the Wole Soyinkas, who are still of the generation that we want out of business to solve this country's problem, have we actually moved to where?
Okay, so I'll take you brought 2 questions. Now, the first question,
yes,
the person misunderstood completely. The person misunderstood. If I don't believe that Nigeria has the potential to be the best country in the whole wide world, I would have packed my bags and baggages long ago and ran away from this country. So let's be clear. I believe in the potentials of Nigeria. I believe in its greatness. It is the rulers that are the problems, and I've always been clear about that. So when I speak about hopelessness, it is not about hopelessness in the potentials of the country. It is about hopelessness in the capacity of the system to deliver on the potential and the faith in the system to even renew itself in a manner that allows it to actualize the potential of the citizens, whom it even denies citizenship to. So answer the second one related to my question of Obasanjo and dear Professor Soyinka. Let me say this. I don't believe in gerontocracy, and I am not suggesting that any one of them should be brought to come and rule. Well, who is going to speak to the deaf man in Aso Rock? Is it me? Would he listen to me? Do I have his phone number? If nobody is talking to him about negotiating a way out of the mess that they have dragged all of us into, don't you see a bloodbath? People, these young men that I see out there, nobody is going to force them off that street. They are ready to die. They are even hoping. Some of them are seeking martyrdom, for heaven's sake. So older heads however much we might we might not, there is a lot to dislike about the way that generation has dealt with Nigeria. But the fact remains that there must be a third force that is capable of acting in goodwill to mediate a middle ground. Because the way things are going right now, the way things are going, if things are left like this, what you will find is that the same thing that has happened with every Nigerian grievance would happen with this one. And that is that the Nigerian state will repress the grievance will bubble over in violence. The people who are being repressed would harden their positions, and then it will be all out violence, and the Nigerian state profits from violence. We don't. So as long as we are not profiting from violence, even if it means sitting down in a room with men that people cannot even stand, they should consider it. Other people might have superior arguments as to what the way forward should look like. I do not presume to know. I can only, you've asked me, look, we can agree on the facts and then disagree on our opinions. The point that nobody can argue is that where we are right now, there is a need to find a middle ground. Extremes, because the government has pushed everybody to extremes now. How do you talk to a government that is killing you? What are you going to say? How do you talk to them? So there must be an elder, an adult, so to say, quote and unquote, in the room. It's unfortunate that we can't look to the international community, and I don't believe we must. We have to find our solutions ourselves.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that, because if it is about, people have been sending me messages, why don't you tell the UN, why don't you do this, the UN. I said the UN didn't help Sudan, the UN didn't help Yemen, the UN didn't help Libya, the UN didn't, I mean, the list goes on and on. To be honest, I even question myself sometimes, why do they even exist? But that's a conversation for another day. You know, it's a totally different conversation. Now, this brings me to people talking about the UN again, talking about the 30-day charter, the 30-day response time. What do you have to say to that? People are saying that we have to hold this protest for 30 days before the UN can come in and do something here. Many people
if you ask me, I'll tell you the UN can go and take a running dive in the nearest pool of shit and dive in it. Pardon my French.
Please speak it here.
There is absolutely nothing benevolent flowing from the Western world to Africa. The day Africa finds its feet, the Western world will collapse economically, because all we have ever done is supply their raw material, and that is by design. It will be cheaper to locate an industry at the source of supply of the raw material. But that has never been the case with Africa. If anything, our production capacity as industrial entities have diminished in the last 30, 40 years. So it is by design that we have become the plantation, the slave plantation. That's why they tolerate our rulers, because they know that as long as we have this kind of rulers, we will continue to be a basket case from where they can take cheap raw material and dump useless goods. The Chinese are wising up to the game as well, and they are the new ones now. So when people are talking about the UN, let's be clear. Let people go and open their brains. Nobody is going to help us. We are the ones who are going to have to help ourselves. All the people who have always pretended to help us, they've only ever gotten us into ever more mess. Go and look at the reporting of what is going on in Nigeria in the Western press. They are reporting it as though it were to be a law and order issue. They are not reporting the human angle, because they cannot justify what is happening in Nigeria to their own people. So when Nigerians are sat in Nigeria and they want the West to help us to solve our problem, they are wasting their time. We would have to solve our problems ourselves. Let them get it into their heads. If Nigerians didn't understand it before, the presidency of Donald Trump should have been sufficient to slap anybody awake if they were still asleep. The West has they have no benevolent intention for us as far as they are concerned. In fact, our case is even worse now. America does not require our oil anymore. The global economy is tanking. The only people who want our oil, they don't care about human rights. So that Nigerian policemen are turning their guns on citizens on the street. Are you going to complain to the Chinese about that? Do they care? And America has stopped pretending that it's a champion of democracy anywhere in the world. So when the UN is talking, why am I wasting my time? Any fool who is waiting for the UN is just wasting his time. Let the UN, I don't care. I don't know anything about any 30-day charter. I don't believe that nonsense. And I believe that it is up to us. Let me tell you, there was one stupid myth, even I have perpetrated. We were saying, hold the Nigerian flag and the Nigerian soldier won't shoot you. It became the point of target for people who call themselves Nigerian soldiers. They were killing people holding Nigerian flag. It tells you what kind of, where do you find a country where a soldier shoots a citizen holding the country's gun and the country's flag? Since when does a flag become a weapon? So anybody who is waiting for the UN, they are waiting for Godot. Waste of time. We are all we have. If you are waiting for anyone, just look in the mirror, look at yourself, and then look at your brother and your sisters, those ones who have your back. That's all you've got. There is no UN anywhere. We are all we have.
Okay, so now let me bring this. Now we are here. We are at a crossroads. Nobody knows where we're going. We're still sitting now, and some people are waiting for a response from the deaf president. Some people are waiting for what the youth are going to do next. And those who can take advantage of the situation and cause chaos and just vent their anger, which has been provoked anyway, are doing what they are doing.
No, I'm sorry, Katung. I need to pull you up on that.
Okay.
If people are burning things in Lagos and all over Nigeria, I would suggest that the first culprit you should look to is the Nigerian state and our rulers, who was busy transporting hoodlums around to attack peaceful protesters. The Nigerian state.
Yes.
So if you suddenly have cases of arson up and down the place, why is it so difficult for people to look to the persons who have been facilitating the work of the criminals in the last week? Nobody can deny that there is a confluence of Nigerian political power and criminal class. There is a confluence. MC Oluomo was out there the other day having to come out to deny his involvement in the attack on protesters. We don't have proof, but there are insinuations that elements of the NURTW are involved in the arson that is going on in town. Why should I debunk it when I know that none of the protesters that I have seen with my own eyes, none of them were holding anything other than flags? So why should they be burning any? No, please. If anything or any of the crime you see being committed today, please.
I've lost your audio, sir. I've lost your audio. Okay, I lost your audio there for a minute.
Yeah, I had somebody trying to call me, but I called it off. What I was saying is that anybody who says that there are criminal elements should look to the Nigerian state that had been facilitating the works of these criminal elements in the full glare of the cameras for the last week. Why should anybody talk to protesters who are not holding anything other than flag about houses that are getting burnt? What is the job of the Nigerian state and the Nigerian police if you are not talking to the protesters? Soldiers that will come and shoot unarmed protesters holding flags. All of a sudden, they don't know how to guard installations again. What they are doing is to deliberately facilitate the works of the criminals so that we will start shouting for law and order, and then they can use that to justify further clampdowns and then use that to normalize the situation. It's a lie. Let nobody seek to blackmail the protesters. No protester has brought violence. The only merchant of violence in the ongoing protest has been the Nigerian state at all levels. They are opening prisons, they are transporting criminals around, and they want to pin that on armless, unarmed protesters. Please, any crime you see, the first duty of the state is security. Let them know if they blame all the criminality in the Northeast on Boko Haram. What about them? What job are they doing there? Is it not the failure of the state that has led to the violence in those places? What about the violence in the president's home state? They just merely seek to weaponize ethnic differences, weaponize all the differences. It is the Nigerian state that does it. So this one, if Boko Haram were to be in this space, they would have weaponized Boko Haram against the protesters.
Yes, and that's how it started initially anyway, and which is what is birthing, because they have brought non-state actors to perpetrate violence against protesters, and they are going to still let them go after that, and then who knows, it might birth another group.
They are the ones, every act of arson, the criminal actions you are seeing on the streets, lay the blame at the foot of the Nigerian state and General Buhari and the other politicians. What they are seeking to do is to put criminal, look, even you, they interviewed prisoners. Prisoners opened their mouth and said that it was the warders who opened the door of the prison and said, leave. And then they turned around and sought to blame that on the protesters. In Osun State, the governor came out and said he was attacked by political thugs. They turned around and sought to blame that on the protesters. In Alausa, they brought thugs in broad daylight. They couldn't deny it. Up till today, nobody has offered an explanation. So these things, we must be careful not to allow ourselves to assume responsibilities for what is none of our business. At the end of the day, it is the duty of the state to provide security in the state. If the government has failed, as it has failed woefully in practically every part of Nigeria to provide security to Nigerians, now turns around and seek to put the responsibility for its failures on the victims, it just shows you that they are not only wicked, callous, they are shameless. None of this can be pinned on the protesters. This rightly belongs to the Nigerians. The body of evidence is so much that if they place it on Aso Rock, it will collapse. There are more than sufficient evidence. Let's not be arguing this again. Every act of vandalism that you are seeing is state-sponsored or state-encouraged or deliberately ignored in order to justify what they are doing. So I'm not going to dignify those charges. No protester was violent. They are the violent ones.
Okay, now we are at the crossroads where we are. We have been met with the violence. We've been met with the military response. Of course, that's the response of the state. What do we do now? Because we are seeing that they are trying as much as possible to suppress the movement, even as far as affecting the mode of communication, which is the internet. They are doing things. Yesterday, MTN conveniently was down around that whole Lekki axis during all of that. The lights were switched off, the cameras were taken away. What do we do moving forward? Because we cannot allow this momentum be killed because they are throwing bullets all over the place. What is the next thing?
Let me say this to you, Cartoon. When you ask that question, it presupposes that there is any one person anywhere who could direct the course of the protests. Listen to the protesters themselves at the ground. I was there. I went for 3 days consecutively. I went to the Lekki protest ground. But I was careful. I respected myself. I stayed at the fringes. I wanted to feel the energy of the crowd, listen to them, just to gauge exactly what they were about. And when I went about, I saw a group of very fiercely independent, highly intelligent young men. And I noticed that they did not inherit the fears of my generation. Because they don't have our hope, they also don't have our fears. If you have something to live for, you'll be afraid of dying. These ones have nothing to live for, really, because the Nigerian state continually tells them that it will not allow them to live. So I really don't think I am in a position to say what the way forward would be. I can only counsel, as I did in the piece I read.
Before you continue, let me just throw this in here as a caveat that I only ask this because these are the questions that I receive in my DM. Because it is, just like you said, I respond as in the same way I said, you guys are presupposing that I should know. You guys are presupposing that there's one person. That's why everywhere the protesters have gone to, they always ask for, where is your leader? Everybody says, we're all leaders, because they are trying to bring, to separate, to divide the people. So I'm asking, maybe on behalf of those who also have asked me, because we look at you as a counselor, as somebody who has vast wisdom, and somebody who might have steps towards what is possible, because, I mean, based on your experience, based on what you have come to understand about this generation. So that's probably the angle the question is going to.
I get you. I get you. Well, let me say this. I posted a piece on my website today, and I shared it on the social media platforms. And one of the things I said was that there will definitely, and there must be, an accounting. That Mr. Jide Sanwo-Olu will come out and tell the kind of horrible lies that he told, denying the humanity of those who were killed last night and in other parts of Lagos. It was just, especially, he was specific about the Lekki place, so it was quite jarring. But after all of that, after we've taken in the insanity of what we've dealt with, what I did say to the young was that perhaps we should take stock. And then, let me be clear, the memory of those boys who died, those ladies who died, not only at Lekki, all over Lagos and all over Nigeria, makes it impossible for me to open my mouth to suggest to any one of the people who committed. They believed the situation so hopeless, they were ready to go and die. They knew the soldiers were coming, they still stood. I cannot demobilize that kind of army. It's not for me. Look, the blood of the innocent energizes the cowards. Because if you kill an innocent man, what would you do to the coward? But I really think that our youth should take the time, perhaps meet in street cells, have clearer pictures of exactly what the way forward is. It might not be a bad idea, really, if they spoke to themselves at the different cell levels where they are carrying on their protest, and probably find a way to coordinate. You know, the problem with this group is that it's so amorphous. You don't even know who to speak to. But if I could speak to anyone, what I'll simply tell them is, I think today is Wednesday. Give it a couple of days. Count the losses. Let's know exactly how many people have died. Let's record what has happened. And then, if I were them, I'll call a general strike. And I'll call a general strike because this can't just be about standing at a toll gate or blocking the expressway. The corporate will of the Nigerian people must be awakened. Everybody must feel sufficiently outraged by what had happened over the last few days to demand a change. I am loath to continue to press that we ignore certain likely mediators, but there is a need for supervening third forces to come in and perhaps broker a way forward. But to think that we can continue like this, it won't work.
Let me give you a second let me say to that, yes, to this question, because we've seen the example of Egypt, the example of Tunisia, of Libya, where there was no said leadership during the Arab wave. We've seen external forces come and give weaponry, aid, and all of that during that struggle. And then after it, a few years down the line, they went back into the same situation because there was no plan in the first place. You know, there's a lot of passion right now. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of emotions running wild. But you see, I asked this question because there has to be something that looks like a short-term, mid-term, and a long-term plan to this situation. If not, we'll circle right back to the same issue. We've seen it happen in other countries, where it's now the West that are actually even dictating the terms for these countries. You know, so do we want to fall back into the same situation as these countries? Shouldn't we be looking to identify what the solutions are. You know, I know that you say you cannot speak to them.
No, when you speak to, I can speak to solutions. I just can't speak to directions to anybody. But when you're speaking to solution, the one thing we've all agreed on in this country is that this system is not working. A system that allows what has happened is definitely not one that is fit for the 21st century. So if anybody wants to talk about the way forward, I will tell you, for instance, that the first step, as I see it, is that the commander-in-chief of the armed forces that killed innocent people yesterday must take responsibility for what happened. The army must take responsibility for what happened. And then genuine steps must be taken, very clear genuine steps that leads to a honest restructuring of the Nigerian space. Because the totality of the NSAS request deconstructed is a demand for restructuring all over, is a demand for equity all over, is a demand for citizenship all over. And the reactions of the state is the reaction that the state has had as template for over 54 years. If anything,
I think we're having either a network problem or call is coming in, or, okay, he's back.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I was saying that the reaction of the Nigerian state to these demands for equality, recognition of humanity, and citizenship cannot be met under our current structures. And that is why President Buhari was unable to do anything about it. I used to play snooker in my younger days. And when you, I'm sure you can, if you are familiar with snooker terms, you say, oh, it's been snookered.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah,
snooker. When those kids demanded an end to SARS, what they did was to effectively demand an end to the system of impunity by which Nigeria is governed. If you ever doubted the impunity, what happened at Lekki is graphic illustration of the kind of impunity that has governed Nigeria for the last 54 years. Now, those children, when they were saying end SARS, they innocently thought that SARS, or maybe they knew it couldn't be, because it doesn't make sense. The moment they said end SARS, what they did was to set a time clock on the Nigerian governance system. And anybody with half a brain will recognize that and sit down to address it. Because there is no way you can end SARS without ending. Look, I don't know how much time we have, but let me share a story with you. Let me share this story with you to illustrate. And I say this on my honor. It's a true story. I'm going to tweak identities in order to protect people. A friend called me about 2 months back. And she said, oh, somebody was kidnapping the daughter. She could see it from the high rise where she lived. And the estate security stopped the armed men from leaving the estate. So I drove to their estate, and by the time I got there, what we found was that these men were from the IG's office. They were from the special kidnap team. They have some anti-kidnapping squad. So what happened? He said a girl was missing. So the father went to the police to report that she was missing. In fact, he reported a case of kidnapping, even though he knew that the daughter merely left home after an argument. The daughter, 24 years old. So the man went to the police, the IG. He reported kidnapping. The IG, and I'm saying the IG not necessarily because he will be the one that will be signed. He might not never even have seen the letter. He might never even have seen the file, but his name was used. The girl's phone records were obtained from the telecoms company. They tracked their numbers, and they went to pick my friend's daughter simply because they found that she was one of those the lady had been calling. So, but by the time they got there, they knew, even before they came, that there was no kidnap. It was a family quarrel. But the powers of the Nigerian police, given by law, was used to procure the invasion of a citizen's privacy, a constitutionally guaranteed right. So the office of the Inspector General was used to subvert that right. The same office was moved to arrest an innocent girl in the course of satisfying the father's wish. Here is the thing, my brother. All you have heard me illustrate just now is the reign of impunity. The law never grants a power that it also does not limit. Every power granted by law is limited by law. But in Nigeria, our rulers do not understand the limits of law. They don't recognize law. The laws applies only to the people they call citizens, who are in reality not citizens. Because the totality of the NSAS campaign, when you deconstruct, is a demand for citizenship. If they were citizens, no policeman will be stopping them anyhow on the road. If they are citizens, and if those are real policemen, they will not be robbing citizens on the road. But get it clear, my brother. When you want a dog to be vicious, you starve it. The Nigerian police is badly paid, badly provisioned, badly quartered, deliberately staffed, so that they will be vicious with the people they should be serving. But unfortunately, the police themselves are unaware of the fact that they are also victims. Because in other countries of the world, at least where I believe you are in the US.
Yes, sir.
If you're a sergeant in the police, you can afford a home in a good neighborhood.
Yes, you can.
Your children will go to good schools. You would have a good car. You would have a pension. You won't need to die on the queue begging to be paid a pittance. So when you have a situation where a man has been deliberately dehumanized so that he too might better dehumanize other people, and then you grant him the powers of impunity so that, okay, we are not paying you well, but we know that you can make money off the people that you are supposed to be protecting. So they become predators by design, not by default. Because anybody who has half a brain should know that a man that you've given a gun to, and you are treating the way you are treating the Nigerian policeman, you get exactly the kind of responses you are getting out of him. So when I used to keep dogs, and what used to happen was that my dogs don't eat until morning. I feed my dogs in the morning. But once they've ate in the morning around 8, 9, that's it for the day until the next day. Full meal. The intention is that by the time it's evening, they are hungry. They are not going to sleep. Anybody who are wandering in my compound will have a chunk of his flesh feeding my dogs. That is exactly what the Nigerian state has done to the Nigerian police. They underpay them, under-provision them, and make sure that whatever they do, nothing happens to them. The man who killed the Akpo 6, that DPO, where is he today? Promoted.
Promoted, yes.
That is the Nigerian police for you. If the only policeman who paid with his life in that case was the one who testified in court. He was poisoned. The state is structured the way it is. And the demands of the children you are hearing is a demand for citizenship. The only way forward, sort it out. Give them, admit that you've cheated them for all this while, and find an equitable way. I would appreciate, and I pray, that the Nigerian ruling class would have enough political will and the common sense to negotiate its exit and give Nigerians a better future. It is the only way they can pay us. They shouldn't plunge us into a bloodbath. The kind of will that is on the street, you can't put that will down by violence. You know one of the songs those kids were singing tonight? How many soldiers, how many people soldier go kill?
Yes, I heard it.
Come on. So please, let's talk to ourselves.
I'm trying to round up here now. By taking responsibility, which is one of the first steps that everybody is saying, and you have also confirmed here that President Buhari should do, does taking responsibility come in the form of the number one call that Nigerian youth are calling out for.
Resign? Resign?
Yes.
Or what?
Yes.
In all honesty, I'm not too sure President and General Buhari has that much honor to resign. He's chased that office for too long. He's wanted that office for too long. I'm not too sure he has. I hope he can find the grace. That would be the best thing he could do. But even if he were to resign, who is going to take over? Is it the one that has been silent forever? No. What would be the proper thing to do really would be to find a way to convoke a national conference. Find a way to have a honest dialogue as a people. He can do that as a last hurrah. Facilitate a national conference and go his way. Nobody, look, it's painful that yesterday's event has energized the secessionists. In an ideal world, it would have been nice if we could have been talking, using this energy to demand a national conference and a restructuring thereafter. But unfortunately, it falls on General Buhari to find the grace to unite the Nigerian people behind a restructuring agenda and then step out. Because I really don't know what normal looks like after this. You kill so many people. Now, I can't in good conscience find the grace to speak against those who are saying he should resign. Buhari has indeed been a very bad boy. So if they are saying he should resign, I would even align myself with that call, but all I just want is peace. If his presence there as a figurehead, which is what he is more or less even now, is to facilitate a constituent assembly of some sort that crafts a new constitution for Nigeria, he will be remembered. And we'll probably find a way to forgive him for what happened yesterday and the other days of the last 5 years. But for anyone to think that there is a normalcy after this, how many people are they going to kill? How many? One is too many. One is too many. And they've done too much already. But I don't see these people deterred by threats of violence, waste of time.
Now, with the issues of accountability and being held accountable, it was ruling states. If, let's say, hypothetically, Buhari resigns, should he be facing a trial?
A tribunal?
A tribunal, yes, a tribunal. And who should oversee it? Many people are saying international crimes courts. Many people are saying no, it should be done locally because we, the people, should be the ones that are going to decide his fate.
There are times when we must have the capacity to see the bigger picture and move beyond our emotions. General Buhari is well over 80 years old. If you really look at him, the man is an old man. There is very little, in fact, I'm not even entirely sure that the man is in complete control of his faculties. I'm not certain that he is completely aware of what has transpired all over the country. So to be holding him criminally liable, I think is a waste of time, really. We should focus more. That's not to say there shouldn't be account. Somebody gave the orders. We already know that he's the commander-in-chief. But some people carried out those orders. There must be accountability. When I say no criminal liability to him, it's not that we shouldn't establish his role. It should be established so that other people in future will be careful about doing similar things. But I wouldn't want us to fixate on punishment, particularly for his person. He's an old man. It's about a system. It's not about his person. It's the Nuremberg trial all over. I obeyed orders. You have a duty to disobey unlawful order. That has to be drummed into the brains of the Nigerian soldiers. I agree there must be accountability at that level. But for Buhari, he's a president twice over now. Yes, establish his guilt, but even before you start, let it be clear that nobody is looking to slam. That man can't survive one day in Nigerian prison. Person who has been fed by the Nigerian state for the last 50-something years. I beg, leave that old man alone.
Well, thank you very much for coming and gracing us. Always a lot of wisdom, always a lot of insights. I believe that we're still going to do this again because we know that the dynamics on ground will change again. And when we see that shift, we probably should come and address it again and see how we have adapted and how we have taken the situation per se. I want to just let everybody know that I am saving the video on my live so you guys can go and rewatch it and share it. A lot has been shared here, and do not be stingy with this information. This information needs to be heard by everybody. It will help open a lot of minds and help our thinking faculties. Thank you once again for coming to do this with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
And please, just a word.
Yes,
Gentlemen,
sir.
please stay safe. Ladies, stay safe. May God condole the families that have lost loved ones. And may God bless your memories. Thank you very much. Good night.
Very much, sir. Yes. For those of us that have come to watch, thank you very much. We shall continue to do this again. Go to GoFundMe and look for Project New Nigeria. People are asking, how do we make a change? What do we need to do? Go to GoFundMe, look for Project New Nigeria, donate. We cannot do it without the resources. These people in power have the resources. We want to institute new things within Nigeria by Nigerians. So go there. Let us make our difference, not just audio all the time. Let us go in there and put our resources and put our money where our mouth is. Thank you very much, everybody. I shall see you again tomorrow. Have a good night.